The philosophy of the Western way is based on my theory of the three wills, which has its theoretical and existential ground in the work of Schopenhauer and Nietzsche in the 19th century. Schopenhauer's conclusion of the blind will to survive resulted in his pessimism. Nietzsche reversed that pessimism into a tragic affirmation of life, that life will out. My nuanced improvement on their theories of will involves a concept of will that is both metaphysical and physical, that is fashioned of three components: three wills as a single will, or a single will as three facets. You Sagaxi will know what I mean when I say first will is the creative, the developing, the primary will to continue in being. That second will is the self-consciousness of first will, where the burden of consciousness and the presence of death brings a higher realization, a transcendence of will. And then the third will, which is a repetition and a simulation of the first two wills, is art, it's artifice, it's science, it's technology. It's the deliberate artistic illusion of reality. Will is reality. And to use the three wills as a lens, as a concept, the first application must be to yourself. To know yourself is the start of the Western way, from the Oracle at Delphi, and from all the dialogues of Plato in which Socrates reminded us that an unexamined life is not worth living. That is the value of the examined life. And if you examine your life, your psychology, everything that motivates you to act and talk and interact, you will see the interplay of these three wills. You will see the initial drive, the initial thrust towards continuation. You can see it in all this species of animal life. Everything that lives wants to continue in its form or a new form based perhaps on changing environments, on catastrophes, on collisions. Yes, we are constantly colliding with our environment, and we are constantly colliding with the future. And to anticipate the future, and to anticipate strategically the machinations of a society, of a C-class society, then you need to have a very, very keen notion of how the theory of the three wills can be applied to what you need to happen. Because society that is extant, the C-class dominated society, will want to buy you, will want to buy your mind, your body, your time, and yet they are also dominated by these three wills. You can read them, and you can particularly read them in their third will, as Homo sapiens dies, use Sagaxi, you will see them utilize third will, technology, and art to unify with the second force, with the second will. The decaying body of Homo sapiens will attempt to drag you down to become defined in their categories. But once you know yourself, once you know that in this exact moment, look at yourself, which of the three wills is dominating? Which of the three wills is utilizing the others? And this is not a battle of fates. No, you cannot negate the existence of the second will in yourself. There is a death wish. There is a tiredness that comes with being. And you think that you are tired because of your years. But think of other life forms and their years and their terms, or suns and galaxies, how long they live and how long they have to live with the presence of an imminent death. Once you understand fully and can extrapolate yourself on this theory of the three wills, then you can understand that the world and reality is not just material, or not just the negation of material as spiritual, because both of those conjectures are manipulated by the commerce class to inveigle you in their schemes. The three wills is your philosophical entrance to personal freedom. And as Sagaxi, you must practice the application of this idea in everything you do, in your games, in your social relations, and particularly in your relation to the other classes. The three wills is the key to the future of Athenopolis. Mind it well. Pay attention and refine it. Refine this idea. Create the catastrophes it takes to make it stronger. And you will build the city. My radical theological theory of the infant God is based in part on T.J.J. Altizer's work in the 1960s and his continuous fight to have his ideas understood. And he himself goes back, and as his ground is Blake and Nietzsche. Now, the concept of an infant God changes everything. Because historically, anthropologically, psychologically, gods have always, in every culture, particularly the Western culture, have been there to supply answers, strength, understanding, rituals, ceremonies, sacrifices. And yet, once you understand that God, as the universe, as a Spinozan entity, as something that is everything but also in every single thing, that this God, this universe, is aware of its being, but not self-aware of itself. This creates a complete revaluation of values, because no longer can you make deals with God. No longer are you betting on immortality as a good wager via Pascal. No. In fact, the entire reversal means you should be asking, what can you do for God? Not what God can do for you. Can God forgive your trespasses? Can he give you immortality for a confession of faith? These are now irrelevant. As is the historical and psychological sentimentality that proclaims God is love. Now, mystics in the Western tradition have said God is love. And they have meditated, and they have gone up onto the mountains, and they have gone into the caves of consciousness, and they have encountered what they think is God. And what they have encountered is God, but it is an infant God only in love with its own being. Yes, these mystics can bask in this self-love, but they mistake the direction, because God is not aware of them. And God will never be aware of this moment, of this infancy. Think back, you cannot remember your infancy when you were helpless and you needed to know where your toes were, how to move your arms, how to talk, how to master the world. So the relation of man to God has completely changed through this radical theory, because now it is our task, it is our duty to raise God to self-consciousness, to build the brain of God. If God is this entire universe, then all intelligences in the universe need to be connected by will to build this brain that enables God to come to a self-realization of itself. Again, Sagaxi, you know, this is not a moral paradigm. This is not a morality play. There is no good and evil here. There is only perception, duty, and execution. You must think of yourself as teachers. You each can be a teacher of God. But wait, if you have been perhaps persuaded by the C-class mentality, and you say, well, yes, I can teach God, but then I will be favored by God. This will be my reward to receive God's love for the teaching. And I say, probably not. Nietzsche's tragic vision of existence lives on in the theory of the infant God. Because from God's perspective, this is all nature. This is the will of God to be educated. This is the will of God, to produce high intelligence somewhere, everywhere in the universe. And why? It's not a mystery. It's not a moral victory. It is not the satisfaction of restless souls. No. It is simply information, intelligence, and the will to survive, because this universe has a finite space and time. There could be and may well be hundreds of billions of other universes. Our Earth was formed, and the chemicals that produced the carbon, that produced the oxygen, by which our life forms depend, was formed by collision with other bodies. And those other bodies perhaps were destroyed. So the decision, the education, is in many respects cartographic. We need to know where our universe is spaced and timed in relation to universes and realities of which we are only barely aware now. To teach the infant God, we will need to accelerate our own development. We need to raise our intelligence and our talent to the nth degree. And we need to unite those minds with the same will. That will that unites the individual man or woman with the will of God. Once that will is aligned, then everything proceeds with development. And that development, put against the background of the decay of Homo sapiens, is even more poignant, more elusive, and eventually will be more successful. You will not live to see God come into consciousness. And he will not remember your work. And yet, this sacrifice, this alignment, this living inside the will of God is the ultimate reality, is the manifestation of will that continues through all space and time, and allows you, with your manipulation of third will, to create with your art, with your rhetoric, and particularly with your science, that your new scientific understanding will create the God that you will never see, the God that those who follow you will see in great and beautiful detail. As children, as students, as adults, succeeding in a society, a global society dominated by the commerce class, you have all grown up and been accustomed to living in exile. being emarginated from the decisions and the power cliques that exist. In those relationships that have been built up between politicians and big business and the military. And all of this doesn't make any sense to you because it doesn't further the will of God. The philosophy of the Western way restores the four primary classes of human society to their proper place. Originally, Western society had a wisdom class, had a noble class, had a commerce class, and a labor class. Those classes live on today from their old Celtic sources in India. But in the West, in the highly capitalized, high-tech West, the hegemony of the commerce class is almost absolute. If you do not make profit or the aspect of future profit your primary motivators, then you don't fit in. If you can't be useful for somebody else's advancement, then you are logically useless. So you can be a poet. You can be perhaps a scientist in the lab. You can be a basketball coach. You can be a salesman. You can be many things, always pretending, always playing along with, yes, I'm out for myself. I'm providing for my family, I am out for myself. And this return on investment cannot and will not persist as the primary motivation of human society. In those days, and intuitively you can feel those days, the wisdom class was educated by themselves to judge, to heal, to write, to perform, to investigate. The noble class had its obligations as well. Military defense, style, patronage of the arts, parties, all of these things. In the French and Russian revolutions, they lopped off the heads. They eliminated the wisdom class. They eliminated the noble class. Oh yes, some simulacra persist in the universities and English royalty perhaps, but these are imitations because everyone knows that the celebrity merchants and their military business connections run the planet. And they are running the planet into the ground. There have been 5 or 6 major extinction events. Once the carbon cycle is interrupted to a certain degree, there's not enough oxygen in the water for the fish, and eventually we will have another extinction event. So the restoration of the classes is a primary goal of the Western Way Institute. How will this be accomplished? Well, How is the impossible ever accomplished? By hard work and imagination. You, Sagaxi, will find the solution for this restoration of the classes. Will the commerce class give up its power willingly? Do you have to make a deal to persuade them that wisdom is the glue that holds a healthy society together? That with wisdom we can save this planet from volcanic eruptions, from the dissipation of our atmosphere, from the carbon dioxide that will suffocate all of our future. I leave it to you to find the solution because I know how difficult it is. I told one story about how I see it happening. You will find a better story. You will find a better solution. And I do not advocate revolution. That's why I say a restoration. A velvet restoration, if you wish. Will the commerce class willingly give up their power? No, of course not. Unless you find the way. Once Western society has regained the clarity of the classes, once the wisdom class is once again in control, then the anxiety, the depression, the decadence that is promulgated by the commerce class will dissipate. Remember, the bankers, the brokers, they can all short man and make money on it. And they will, given the opportunity. You will find a way, my Sagaxi. May it be soon. I feel most fortunate and grateful to be speaking to you like this. As the ideator of this theology, as the founder of this city and institute, it is a great pleasure to be speaking to individuals in the future, and those few who happen upon this in the present. But they too, those few in the present who understand what I'm saying, they too are talking to you. Because you have realized these ideas into a truly healthy society. And how did you do this? Well, my conjecture is that you were able to solve the biggest problem that we as humans have right now. About 40,000 years ago, Homo sapiens eliminated their competition. The Neanderthals and the Denisovians were extinguished. Many of the wild animals were eliminated. Many diseases were also eliminated. Oh, Homo sapiens was the most clever creature ever to walk this earth. We do not deny this. And in fits and spurts, they created Western culture and the Western way. But now they are degenerate, and now they cannot be trusted, because they will sell your ideas and your talents and your cells and your organs to fuel their machines. You live the reality of Homo Sagax. I am only speaking of it now. But I know the primary obstacle. Because in their death spiral, Homo sapiens has invented their own successor. Since the arrival of computers and artificial intelligence and robotics, they are preparing the world and human society for the hybrid, for the Homo Borg. And this hybrid will not have the characteristics of the human. They are already instilling the characteristics of reliability, servility, and efficiency in the L class already. It's everywhere. To get ahead, you have to act and think like a computer. And there are already those prophets who say transhumanism is our only future, that artificial intelligence is the only way. And so my conception of Homo Sagax in the films and in the poetry is to light a beacon, to create a picture, to create the space and time for a major mutation, but a major natural mutation. To raise God, you must first raise your consciousness. You must tap into all the intelligence in the universe. You must talk to hydrogen clouds. You must learn from the stars and the galaxies, the other intelligences that are out there. It won't be easy. This is the battle for the future of man. 22,000 years of Homo Sagax. And then the next man will appear. This dialectic, this evolutionary leap, is a product of our will now. But primarily and principally, it is your will from the future acting on us now. I rely on you. I created you, but you are more intelligent and more talented than your creator. Just as we are more intelligent and creative than God right now. So again, I'm happy to be here talking to you. This is a document. An art form, a poem, a striving of will that transcends this particular society, this particular time. We are talking across space and time. And you have already surmounted many of these problems. You have figured out a solution to Homo Borg. And I compliment you on that solution. Continue and thrive. This manifesto of the Western way, with a small dose of humor, I hope, and a small dose of existentialism, can reveal the struggle. Do we say the struggle never stops? No. Because in Western culture and Western civilization, we have had a few high peaks and then almost immediate collapse. We had 100 or 200 years of Greek culture that collapsed. We had 100 or 200 years of Renaissance culture that collapsed. We had a rebirth of Renaissance culture in the 60s that collapsed. In free will theory, this all makes sense because every advance of consciousness is retorted by second will, by a desire to eliminate consciousness, go back to routine, let the experts do what they do. But as you survey the Western world now, it is very difficult to distinguish the Eastern from the Western. Earlier I mentioned Hindu society based on the classes. You might think that that is Eastern, but no. It has the same Celtic source as ours. No, what is the enemy is collectivism, despotism, surveillance. At the Western Way Institute, as a proving ground for those who want to become a citizen of Athenopos, for you Sagaxi, it's important to understand who the enemy is and to win them over. I mentioned before about the W class convincing the C class to give up their power, and they will. But there is a very definite viral infection of the East into the West. On a religious level, it's the theologies of the Abrahamic tribes. But there's also socialism and political correctness and all of those philosophies that claim everyone is the same, everyone has the same talent, everyone is a consumer, everyone is a voter, everyone can be manipulated. So at the Institute, it can take a day or it can take years. Those who wish to find and create their own Western way must first deprogram themselves from the shibboleths, the formulae, and the conventions of the Eastern way, which has to do with groupthink, peer pressure, never standing out, never questioning authority. The Western man, the Western woman, in the way, is free by birth, is free by intent. And to be free is a struggle. It is our struggle. It may still be your struggle. But our struggle is that the overlap of having to survive in a C-class society, having to wear masks, having to wear paradigms that are ragged, useless, contradictory, especially when that society is dying. This is the golden moment. This is the time when Homo sapiens must confront its successor, and that is you. But beware, because these elements of the Eastern way are insidious. Because you may rightfully say, why should I align myself with the will of God if I get no pleasure? If I have no release from all of this pain? And I say, with Nietzsche, accept the tragedy. Accept this duty. Because the C-class and the Eastern way will take your life in exchange for minor comforts. Do away with your minor comforts. You don't care about the law. The laws are made by the C-class to protect their deals and their property. Honor in the W-class is all you need. So from our struggles, we do not anticipate that these viruses will go away. They may go dormant. But I point them out to you, just as the Homo Borg may try to make a comeback, that these manifestations of the Eastern way, just like the second will always be with us, will always be with you. Don't make the mistake of turning the Western way into a faith, into a belief system, into a church. No. You Sagaxi are free men. You know the past. You build the future. You align yourself with the will of God. And this small art piece, this manifesto, inserted in one small clause of time, I hope resides, I hope survives, to give you a reminder of the struggles of the past, just as we today honor and acknowledge those thinkers, those artists who have, with their courage and their intelligence, created the freedom of mind, created the space-time for will to act. Think of all of this as energy for your actions and for the future that you build for your descendants. My Sagaxi.